We can all think back to a point at time where we sat with somebody where we knew something didn't feel right. And often our callers say it was one person asking the question, hey, you look like you're having a rough trot, that made them feel, okay, somebody is seeing this, I need to do something about it.
Hello and welcome to the Jean Hales podcast. I'm your host, Shelley Ware. Don't believe Instagram. Pregnancy and being a parent is tough, really tough. And for some people, it can be too much. In Australia, 1 in 5 new and expecting mums will experience anxiety and depression during pregnancy and the first year of their baby's life. 1 in 5. And not just mums, 1 in 10 dads and non-birth parents. It's so common, but we're not talking about it. So today I'm interviewing Julie Borninkhof. She's the CEO of PANDA, an organisation that supports new and expecting parents. She's going to tell us what perinatal anxiety and depression feels like, how we can recognise it in ourselves and our loved ones. So please enjoy my interview with Julie Borninkhof. So we're here today to talk about perinatal anxiety and depression. Let's unpack that name first. What does perinatal mean?
When we talk about the perinatal period, we're traditionally talking about the period throughout the pregnancy, so that first 9 months of mum's and dad's life into the first 12 months of baby's life.
So I always thought it was called postnatal.
Postnatal was how we all knew about postnatal depression. It was the first area that we all identified. It was where we saw doctors and GPs feeling more confident in referring people for their low mood that was ongoing and not just baby blues after they had had a baby. So I think as a community, our awareness was just focused in on that period after the birth of their bub that we refer to as the postnatal period.
Well, I've learnt that new for today. But I'm just wondering too, we do have moments in our life where we're anxious or depressed, but we're actually talking about the medical condition of anxiety and depression. How is it different, in particular with new or expecting parents?
So I think the first thing when we're talking about anxiety and depression in this period is that it looks so different for everyone. So there's that sort of really normal stress and worry, concerns about what kind of parent they're going to be, whether they're going to be able to provide the safety and security for their new growing family, whether or not they've got the financial resources. Really normal stress and worry that we would expect anyone to be experiencing. But on a kind of cycle, people then move into a space where the worry is no longer just in their mind and kind of thinking, but actually becomes a bit of a physical response. So they start to feel it in their gut. And we know that when people enter a space that we would formally diagnose them with anxiety, it's because they've entered into a space where they really can't separate from those racing thoughts, the worries, the concerns that are getting in the way of their daily life that are also having physical impact on them. So it might be that they can't sleep, they can't eat because they've got an upset tummy because they've been, overwhelmed with these feelings of racing. They might need to wee constantly because they're feeling really worried and worked up. It has a massive impact from an anxiety point of view on people's connection to themselves, their ability to be able to go on with their daily living and tasks and care for themselves or their families more broadly. And then depression's kind of on the other end of the spectrum, and often people experience both anxiety and depression or one or the other. And we know that with people who become really depressed, again, on a spectrum, big for some, not so big for others, it's when they become so bogged down with these thoughts and concerns that they really feel they need to lock themselves away, disengage from their supports, again, may have difficulty sleeping and eating, impact on their general mood, not able to feel like they can elevate and be happy about anything, but feeling really stuck, teary and emotional.
So how common is perinatal anxiety and depression?
So we know that prior to COVID, we were consistently reporting that 1 in 5 mums and 1 in 10 dads were likely to experience perinatal anxiety and or depression during their journey through this time. We also know that as a result of the increased stresses, that those rates have probably increased.
So you just touched on it and people might not have picked it up, but I picked up that you were talking about non-birth parents or dads. that they can get it too. How does that work?
Yeah, look, again, we know that mums and dads and non-birth parents, if you're in a same-sex relationship or gender fluid, the experience is the same. So we would expect that 1 in 10 non-birth parents are experiencing anxiety and depression during this period, or a myriad of other vulnerabilities. And ultimately, it's the same thing. These compounded pressures, changes to self-identity, self-expectation and feeling like we're going to fail and that we're not good enough for this role. It may have been excited about, may have been not sure about in our entry into it, or has an impact.
So it can be about that there's that sudden change, that sudden stressful change that happens to a person. But can it be the physical changes that happen to somebody's body as well that causes perinatal anxiety and depression?
Most definitely, as your body changes, whether it's hormonally, and for many people, just coming to terms with the look of their body changing is such a flag for that questioning. And as I said, some of those existential concerns about the kind of parent you're going to be, whether you're going to be the same as your own parenting experience, and those things all compound. So it's a real chocolate cake of different ingredients that come together, and sometimes for people don't taste so good when it's baked metaphorically.
This is so true. So you've touched on a few things about what actually happens to you during perinatal anxiety and depression, but it can get to a serious level. What are some of the worst case scenarios and consequences for people?
Yeah, look, firstly, I'd really like to reinforce that it's really unusual for people to become so unwell that they may get to the point of harming themselves or somebody else. But we know, as we see in the news, and people become really concerned and traumatised by these events, that people do get to a point where they feel that they have nowhere to turn. So we know at PANDA, 20% of our callers will express a suicidal risk, as in, I don't want to wake up, I feel really overwhelmed and I need a way out of this feeling kind of language. So the work that we do on the helpline is to help people understand that that experience is normal and that we need to find another way for them to reduce the distress they're feeling. And we also know that, as would be seen on the news at times, parents will take to a space of hurting their infant because they feel that there's no way out, or they may have a psychotic disorder or another vulnerability that causes them to feel that. And these are really dire consequences of an illness for somebody that they have not been supported through or not been able to navigate through and feel no other way to respond to it. And they're tragic and thankfully happen, so little in the Australian context. But they're really important reminders to ensure that we are doing everything we can to support people, and that as a community we don't feel we have to carry our friends or the people in our mums groups' concerns, and that we know where to refer them and support them so that they get the help they need when they need it.
That's such a good point. We should all be working as a community to make sure new or expecting parents are getting help when they need it. What are some common signs of perinatal anxiety and depression that we might notice in our loved ones or ourselves?
I think first and foremost is really focusing in on that flag or the voice that we have internally. And we can all think back to a point at time where we sat with somebody who was either at physical or mental risk, where we knew something didn't feel right. And quite often, again, because there are so many changes occurring for mums and dads and non-birth partners, that during this period, they're second-guessing their experience. So as we say on the helpline, if you see something or you have that gut response or a concerns flag for you for whatever reason, whether it's something little in terms of somebody's engagement with the things you knew that they would normally get great joy from, or whether they're disengaging from all of their community and support network, whether they look like they're not sleeping when their bub's sleeping or not able to eat and, dropping weight, which again, if somebody's experiencing a really disrupted pregnancy, is quite normal for them to lose weight whilst, growing a baby. Any of those indicators or things that just feel outside the norm are often the point at which to say, hey, how are you going? And again, not feeling as a friend or a support person that you have to fix it for them, but knowing that there are supports that you can connect them with. And often, our callers say it was one person asking the question around, hey, you look like you're having a rough trot, that made them feel, okay, my experience is valid. Somebody is seeing this. I need to do something about it. And that tipped them into reaching out for support from the helpline.
That's so wonderful to hear that people are having that kind of experience where friends are reaching out. But there is still that stigma attached around it, and we don't talk about it as much as we should. Why do you think that is?
Oh, I think there are so many reasons. Even in this country, we know we have a history of babies being taken from parents who were deemed to not be fit, from women being hospitalised and institutionalised in our deep history for being vulnerable or unfit and unwed parents. We know that a lot of the callers that reach out for support from our helpline are concerned about disclosing their identity or their true experience because they're scared that Child Protective Services or other emergency services may be brought into the mix. And we spend a lot of time on the helpline reinforcing that that is not the end game in seeking support. Firstly, we're focusing on the individual that's reaching out for support. And secondly, if we do need to help them to make their child or help them to make themselves safe, we will do that in partnership with them.
What about your callers that are from different backgrounds, that are non-English speaking? How do you support them?
It's a great question. And, 2 years ago, we probably would have said not as well as we would have liked to have, and are still very early on in our journey in ensuring that people for whom English is a second language have better access to supports and information. And I'm really proud of the work that the team at PANDA have done over the last 2 years. And if you visit our website, you'll see we now have key fact sheets translated into 41 languages, which we're just so very proud of. And they've all been co-designed and developed with our community, so they make sense and they're really sound translations. We also have our website translated into 40 languages, which ensures that people are able to navigate and understand what support will look like to them when they reach out to our helpline. If we had a magic wand, we'd be able to deliver our helpline into language, via people speaking the language of our callers and addressing their needs head on in language. But we still work with great translators to be able to provide quality care during this period. And look, at this time, we've got about 15% of all of our callers coming in are from non-English speaking backgrounds. And that's growing. And we're so very proud of the work we're doing there. And it takes a village with our communities in this space. So giving information that can be used by maternal figures, by elders, by religious leaders and cultural leaders, by community members more broadly, being able to share those resources and start to give language to the experience. For many communities, this is not an area that's spoken about.
Okay, Julie, so we've discovered that we do have perinatal depression and anxiety, or we suspect it. What can we do?
Again, a great question. And the simple answer, whilst there are a range of services out there from PANDA's perspective, is visit the website, panda.org.au. On that website, on the very first page, you'll see some drop-down boxes which are really simple about whether or not you're expecting or have a new baby, whether you're a mum or a dad, or whether you're a health professional supporting somebody. And that page will navigate you through to a mental health checklist, which explores your mood, your behaviours, your relationships, and gives you a read at the end of it around how you're travelling and whether or not the experience you're having is something that would be benefited by seeking support from a helpline like ours or re-engaging with a health professional that you may have had a history with. So the checklist gives you a bit of a report at the end of it that you can take to your GP or take to your mate or your parent and say, look, this is how I'm travelling. And then you don't have to find those words. And our helpline is always there. And whilst we have high demand for our helpline, if you ring up, leave a message. If you can't get through to somebody directly, your place in the queue gets maintained and we'll call you back as soon as we can. And that can be reached by 1300 726 306.
Thank you so much for your time, and Julie, and the wonderful work that you do at PANDA. I've been a huge supporter for years and really grateful for the work you do with young parents-to-be and parents already. So well done and keep up the great work, really.
Thank you so much, Shelley. And look, opportunities like this to have really open conversations about the fact that this experience is really normal and that, as all of our services know, working together is what we love to do, and sharing these messages in this way are just so fundamental to us changing the story for the community. So again, thanks for this and thanks for being a valued partner of PANDA.
I loved Julie's takeaway at the end there. Perinatal anxiety and depression is really normal. It's not something that makes you a bad parent, and it's not something you have to just suffer through, hoping it'll get better on its own. If you're looking for help or more information, check out PANDA's website, panda.org.au. We've put that link in the show notes, as well as the number for PANDA's national helpline, 1300 726 306. See you next time.